Today is VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Victory in Europe Day marks the unconditional surrender of the armed forces on the 8th of May 1945. This marked the official surrender of all German operations, with the High Command doing an announcement saying, "The German High Command will at once issue orders to all German military, naval and air authorities and all forces under German control to cease active operations." Celebrations ran throughout the whole of the UK and allied countries. More than 1 million people celebrated in the streets throughout the UK, and in London, crowds gathered in Trafalgar Square and outside Buckingham Palace to see King George VI, his Queen Elizabeth, and their daughters Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret alongside Winston Churchill, the man who marked the hour. VE Day is a day we should forever remember, and today marks 80 years since that monumental moment of victory in Europe. Today marks 80 years since VE Day. This was a monumental moment in our history. For 5 years we had been fighting a war against Germany, and today was the day when it all came to an end, with Germany giving 100% surrender. And of course, people celebrated in the streets. So for this 80th anniversary of VE Day, I wanted to share a story of some of my relatives who fought in the Second World War, and I also wanted to go through these newspapers here that I found when I was going through my grandma's things. When it comes to these newspapers, however, I think a lot of these are probably later editions, more commemorative newspapers to remember these times that have gone by. And the only reason why I feel this way is because they're a bit too white in my opinion. Older newspapers are most likely to be yellow, but it's a possibility there might be a genuine VE paper in here. I sincerely doubt that, but we will have a look all the same. So these are the papers, and I'm going to go through them with you today. So the first thing I've seen is this one here that says VE Day on the front of it. Look at it. You can see the people rejoicing, you can see the Union Jack flying. That's really amazing. I love seeing stuff like this. I love learning about the human side to all these different stuff, all these things that happen throughout history. It's a human side of it that I absolutely love. So I love being able to see the celebration that these people have, and a much deserved celebration. They've been at war for 5 years. So let's give this a bit of a read. So it says at the top that it's from the Daily Mirror. It is Tuesday, May the 8th, 1945. And for this particular paper, it was 1 penny. Like I said, I don't know if this is a genuine or it's likely to be a copy because it's just a bit too white, but who knows, maybe it is a genuine. But I just love it. So it says here, VE Day. It's over in the West. Today is VE Day. The day for which the British people have fought and endured 5 years, 8 months and 4 days of war. With unconditional surrender accepted by Germany's last remaining leaders, the war in Europe is over. Except for the actions of fanatical Nazis in isolated pockets, such as Prague. The Prime Minister will make an official announcement in accordance with agreements between Britain, Russia and the USA at 3 o'clock this afternoon. All today and tomorrow are public holidays in Britain in celebration of our victory. And the last one says, we also remember and salute with gratitude and pride the men and women who suffered and died to make triumph possible, and the men still battling in the East against another cruel enemy who is still in the field. I'm assuming that probably means the war in Japan, because that still was going on. But I just think it's really cool. It says here as well, the VE scene, so this scene here, it says it's in Trafalgar Square, and it says, it was a high old time in Trafalgar Square last night. Everybody wanted to climb something. This party of Wrens and allied soldiers celebrated by climbing onto the lions. Army policemen present, like Nelson on his column, turned a blind eye. So even the police are in on this. They're just like, we don't care. It's a cause for celebration. I don't care if you are climbing all over the statues. We are just happy it is over. The war is over. Or at least the more physical side of it was over. There was still a lot of political things to happen. There was a lot of other things happening in Germany and the other surrounding countries. But that's a story for another day. Today is for VE Day, when it's over. And these people are celebrating like they should. And I absolutely love it. So inside we have a depiction of soldiers still struggling. We have other things as well, just talking about different fights that are going on, different articles for different things that people are still trying to sell, because it is a newspaper at the end of the day. It's going to have everything you need. In the centre we have the Diary of War throughout, talking about when Neville Chamberlain said that he thought we were at peace with Germany, and then it's resulting to Winston Churchill being on some rubble. So clearly Neville Chamberlain's thoughts, unfortunately, were not true. But this is just talking about the story of the war itself, showing you key figures in that war as well. This is what makes me think it's a more of a commemorative paper rather than an actual one, but I don't know, maybe the actual ones genuinely told the story of the war, not that people needed to know that because they were living it. In here as well we also have comics, so we have the iconic Jane comics here, and of course she is put in a state of undress, which was a very common scene for this poor woman. Always being in a position of undress for some reason or another. And then on the back you have more celebrations, which is at Piccadilly. And just look at the amount of people. There's loads of people there, probably tens of thousands of people, all filling up the streets, all celebrating the end of the war in Europe. I think this is absolutely wonderful that we have this, and really happy to have these sort of papers. So there's another paper here as well. So this is a VE Day one, and this is by the Daily Mirror. Now this is definitely a special. You can see with the colour just there, because papers at the time wouldn't have had colour, at least very little colour. If it did, not like this. And again, it's got the same comic strip that I've literally just shown you on the back of Jane being in a state of undress. So this is definitely a commemorative paper in this one here. And this one is talking about the different people who were there, the stories, the human stories of people's experiences throughout the war, both good and bad. And yeah, it's this stuff that I absolutely love. I love the stories. I love learning about what people did, how they coped. I'm really fascinated in the Second World War. It's a period of history that I'm genuinely really interested in. And it's always been the human elements of it that I've been interested in the most, because it just makes me think, like, how do you survive? How do you keep going, you know? Say, like, you're a woman who is based in London, you've got bombs flying overhead, your kids are up the country somewhere, your husband, maybe your father, maybe your brothers are off overseas fighting, and you're on your own. It's like, how do you cope with that? Answer is, you just keep going. That's just what humans are made to do. And it's these stories of love and triumph and survival that I just absolutely love, and I just really enjoy it. So, like, I fight for a better Britain. So we've got other stories going on here. So yeah, just all the stories of people's experiences, the good, the bad and the ugly, because war is definitely not a nice thing. But it's just all these wonderful stories about troops. It says here, sorry to inform you that your son, Trooper E. Duckworth, number 3388139, died of wounds. So it's talking about the sad side of it as well, of like people receiving notes from the officers to explain that their loved ones had died. Because you've got to remember, even though this was a day of celebration and the war was over, it fully wasn't over. Like, people were receiving on this day letters from the War Office explaining that their loved one wasn't coming home. And so even though that in itself must have been really conflicting, because on one hand you're celebrating because it's over, but you've just learned that your loved one has died in the process, which would make you very proud that they fought for their country and for this celebration, but also really sad that you couldn't be with them. So yeah, I just absolutely love this. I think it's wonderful. It's also talking about the Nazis, and it's also talking about the Germans as well and the Nazis. The one thing I do like about this particular paper is that it's got a really beautiful coloured image on the back of Winston Churchill celebrating with everybody else that the war is over, and he was seen as a great leader in this point. You know, people rejoiced, people loved having Churchill as their leader because he pushed the nation. He was definitely a war prime minister. Like, he tried to be prime minister again later on, and he wasn't as successful the second time around, but he was definitely really successful in the Second World War, because he just had that oomph. He had that energy of, we will succeed. And he was right, we did succeed. So I absolutely love these sort of imagery. It's just wonderful, just absolutely wonderful. There's another one here as well, which I think has actually fallen out of that, so I'll have to try and find out where this belongs. But again, we've got a lovely coloured image of people celebrating. Look at that! Happy and glorious. Happy and glorious. Look at that. That is amazing. Just look at it. Oh, this is fantastic. Like I said, this is a commemorative paper, but it's people's stories, people that were there, people that are celebrating the end of the war. Again, a picture of the crowds massing, you know, to celebrate the end of the struggling and the suffering and getting to have your family back. We also have depictions of, yes, Churchill doing the V for victory. V for victory. That's what this ended up being. V for victory. And it's just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I absolutely love this. Whether it be commemorative or not, I absolutely love it. And there's other things as well, talking about the fashion of the time. There's things talking about just people's experiences. And it's just all stories. We've even got a little bit to do with the King as well, celebrating with Winston Churchill just there as well, the King and Queen. So yeah, I absolutely love this. And it's the human stories that I absolutely love. This is what I love about it. So I'm just seeing if I've got any more papers. So they're not that. What have we got here? 1945. So this is a completely different one. Oh, this is a VD. So this is part of the VD special as well, talking about the nation, showing you like the map of the war and the Princess Elizabeth and the breakdown of the war. I think this is actually from that special as well. So I don't unfortunately have any I don't actually have any papers from that time. I've just got this one, aside from that first one, which may or may not be an original. I don't think it is, but yeah, and we've got other parts of it as well. I'm going to have to put all these back together because they've clearly fallen apart. But yeah, there's just all these different stories of people who were there and the experiences they had, and this one about people falling in love with JIs, because that was a common thing. Again, both good and bad. So you did get a lot of young women who were single who would fall in love with JIs that came over, American JIs, and then they would end up going off to America to live with them, which is great. That's a happy ever after. In some cases, these women would fall in love with JIs because they thought their partners were dead, only to then find out the partners weren't dead. So then they had to make a decision. Do you go with man number one or man number two? And yeah, and in some cases, like with every case, you know, you fell in love with the guy and the guy just then ditched you. That was a common thing as well. But yeah, I just absolutely love these stories. I love that my grandma had saved these papers to do with VE Day, and I think it's absolutely wonderful that I can look through these and learn and get a feel for, only if it's just a sliver, a bit of a feel for what it might have been like for people. In regards to my own family, I did actually have family members that fought and helped with the war effort. So one family member that I had, who isn't a direct family member to me personally, She's my great aunt, I would say, through marriage, but she was actually a land girl. And I got to learn about that recently through her daughter, who I've actually been talking to learn more about the genealogy of my mum's side of the family. So I got to learn that her mum was a land girl throughout the Second World War, which is really, really cool because I'm really fascinated about land girls. It's just one of those things that's like I always said when I talk to people about the war and out of just pure interest, I'm just like, oh, if I was there, I would probably be a land girl. I don't know if I would because I'm a bit squeamish when it comes to like spiders and mice and things. That I like the idea of working on the land, so that's a role that I think I probably would have taken on if I was there at the time. And to learn that a family member in my family was a land girl is an amazing thing for me. And the person that I've actually started to gather information on is my great granddad, Sidney Hunter, who was my mum's granddad, so on my mum's side of the family. Now, my granddad, Sidney, he was a lovely man. I know it sounds a bit biased, but he genuinely was a lovely man. But my granddad, Sidney, he was part of the 78 British Infantry Division, which basically meant that his role was to drop off supplies. So he and his platoon actually went to Sicily, they went to Tunisia, Italy, Austria, and they also had a bit of a layover in Egypt as well. And that division, it was also known as the Battle Axe Division, they were meant to give supplies of food, of weaponry, of equipment to the places that they went. They were also considered to be one of the best divisions. I don't know if that's true or not. This is just what Google said, that they were considered to be one of the best divisions. They were seen as being very moral and also showed great leadership. And while my granddad was in Italy, I was told by family members some stories of him while he was there. Some are not overly nice, but the one I'm going to show you before I sign off this video is he was actually, as I've said, he was in Italy. That was one of the places he was. And he stumbled across a very heavily pregnant young woman. So he decided to help this young woman. He put her in the back of the van, probably with the aim of driving her to hopefully a better location to help her hopefully have a child there. I don't think it probably would have been a hospital because this is the 1940s. Hospitals wasn't really somewhere people tended to have babies all that often. They tended to have them more at home. But he was obviously going to try and send her somewhere where it'd be safe. Unfortunately, her contractions got even more intense to the point that my granddad ended up being in the back of the van and helped her to deliver her baby. And she ended up naming the child after him. And I think that's just a wonderful story because this just shows that my granddad cared about humans. He was all about looking after people and helping people. And he helped this strange lady who we'd met on the street, and he helped her to give birth to her baby boy. I would love to be able to track down said baby boy and see if there's any information on him. It would be really cool to find out, but I wouldn't even know where to begin on that one. But I thought it was a really lovely story to be told that my granddad did in Italy at the time. There is other stories as well, and some not really nice ones, so I'm not going to share those. But unfortunately, this kind of was the common thing, that the older generation just didn't share their stories. So there is a lot about the war that I just don't know about, unfortunately. My granddad died in 1996, so unfortunately, I can't ask him for information. I can't find out what his thoughts were or his opinions or any stories or anything like that because unfortunately he's no longer with us. And as for my great grandma, when I asked her about the war, because she was with us, she managed to live to 100, but I did try and ask her about the war and she would only say boys went to the desert and never came back. That's literally the only thing I would get out of her was boys went to the desert and never came back. The only other memory that I've got of my grandma ever mentioned anything to do with the war was when I went to see her once and I was wearing my dungarees because that was all the fashion in the 90s/early noughties, and she just looked at me and said, "That's what we used to wear for work." Those are the only things I can really say that I can remember at those times. And then if you ask like your actual grandparents, they were too young to really remember it. They were children at the time. And unfortunately, I've only got one grandparent now to be able to ask about that, and she can't really remember much of that time. I am really proud of my granddad for being part of this, and he was there from the very beginning because a friend of mine recently looked into a bit of information for me, and he basically explained that my granddad had signed up for the war in 1939 and he stayed all the way through. He never swapped divisions or anything like that. He stayed all the way through, and thankfully he managed to survive as well, which I'm so grateful for because I got to meet him. I know a lot of people didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, today is VE Day, and I would love to learn from you if you're happy to. I would love to learn some stories about your family members and what they got up to. If you want to share them, don't feel obligated. But I would love to know stories about your grandparents. If you want, you can share those down in the comments, and I hope you have a wonderful day.